You're listening to Ireland's Aviation Podcast.
Welcome to this week's Squawk 7000. Well, it's been a very long time since people were able to gather together at an airfield for a fly-in, and this week's episode comes to you from ILAS field near Wexford. We'll be talking to some of the people behind the event, some of the pilots and some of the organisers on this week's edition.
Aidan Power, I suppose, is the ILAS coordinator here in the southeast.
You're actually looking after the traffic coming in at the moment.
Yes, it was quite slow this morning earlier because I suppose with a little bit of fog remaining there, and in the Midlands I believe there was some fog around about there, so it's really settled now, and I suppose between this and the afternoon now we should have quite a few more.
Tell me about the location of the field. For people who haven't been in before, easy enough to find for some people, and other people find it a bit of a challenge, but if you get your bearings it's quite easy.
Yes, I suppose the nearest landmark here is Taghmon village, and Wellington Bridge then is out to the west. We're about 16 nautical miles from Waterford Airport, about 15 miles from Wexford town. So that's the general location, down in what we call the sunny southeast.
Well, it's certainly proven that so far today. Tell me about flying for yourself. What are you flying here?
Well, I got my licence back in the mid-80s, doing an airfield in Castlebridge at that time, owned by John O'Loughlin, and it was a Beagle Pup, a very unique aircraft, and we got many pilots, I suppose, trained from that. And I've been flying different types since then. We've owned a rally aircraft that was based here for a number of years, about 12-14 years.
On the line at the moment, I think.
It is up there, indeed. It is very here today. It's based now up in Limetree, up the country, and it's a regular visitor to us. And then in the more recent years, then it was an Avid aircraft, similar to the Eurofox. Condor is what we have been flying up to now, and you never know what will come in the future.
Now there's a whole lot of activity going on behind us as well. There's people actually washing up.
Well, that's a very important part of this, because I suppose it's about getting something to eat. I know when we go to other airfields we love to get either a tea or a coffee or something with it, and that makes up for the little bit of anxiety on the way down to. So that's Roger, that's copied. If you want to call establish on a left-hand downwind for runway 36.
Call left-hand downwind runway 36, Bravo Kilo Charlie.
So you'll have aircraft coming from all over Ireland eventually today. Tomorrow.
Our very first aircraft was in from Sligo. That was it took them about an hour and 20 minutes to come down. The weather was a little bit iffy up there early this morning, so that was the first aircraft in. But they've been progressively from different parts of the country since then.
There's a man walking past with 2 plates of breakfast. We better go and find out what he's at.
Oh, absolutely. Send him down here.
I'm coming down to find out what's actually happening here in the interesting end of the kitchen. What are you two at?
Making breakfast. Frying rashers and eggs to beat the band. My name's Cindy Ryan.
Cindy, what's the story here? You've been feeding an army of people this morning.
Only about 40 so far.
That's more than most people do in the morning, to be fair.
It is.
I have to say, it was very tasty too.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
What's your involvement down here?
I married in. My husband has a plane in the field here.
Who's this guy beside me who you've actually got in the sink?
That's my husband.
So I'm Mike Ryan.
Hi Mike, how are you?
Not too bad.
What have you been at today?
Doing a little bit of everything, from starting off in the morning to getting the airfield ready and doing the airfield inspection and helping Aidan. And when that's all over then, and the cooking is getting going,
He comes in and does the wash up for me.
Transfers over.
It's quite a team operation then, isn't it?
It is, yeah. A little bit of everything. That's it. So everybody pitches in. It's great, you know.
Now, I think the other thing, of course, is that people have been really starved, if you pardon the pun, of some aviation activity. People are delighted to get away.
Exactly, they are. And we've been blessed with the weather at the moment here, you know. So we've been planning this, and we've had a 2-day event this time instead of a 1. So we're going to have it again tomorrow, and hopefully it'll all go as good as today.
You dry your hands there. Can I drag you out for a minute? Because I also want to talk about airplanes today. And you have one parked outside.
That's correct, I do.
What is it?
It's a Murphy Rebel.
What is a Murphy Rebel?
A Murphy Rebel is a kit aeroplane from Canada. It's from BC, it's from Vancouver. So you buy the kit, you can make it yourself, and you can put it on a permit to fly then.
I have to say, the very first impression I had of the aircraft, and we'll walk over towards it, is how wide it is. It looks extremely comfortable.
Oh, it is comfortable. Plenty of room in it for two big people. You know, that's the thing about some airplanes. They're very tight. They're very shoulder to
intimate
shoulder.
is the word. I think
Yeah. So I'll go around the other side if you wish. There. So this one actually, I got this from France. So it was built in France. It was there for about 20 years. And I went last year and I purchased it there. So
it is, to describe for people who are listening to us on the podcast, it's robust looking, isn't it?
Oh, it is robust looking. It's all aluminium, so it's a metal plane. There's no fabric in this one. There's lots of rivets. If you can look up on the website, and would you hazard a guess as to how many rivets are in there?
I have no idea. Actually, to be fair, there are a lot of them.
There's 20,000 are supposed to be in it. So she is fairly robust, as you say, yeah.
Has it a utility category? Is it used in agriculture? Is it purely for fun?
They use it in other countries, in Canada, out for bush flying. Right. So, the bush flying, and it's ideal here with the field as well.
Short takeoff?
Oh, yeah, short takeoff, and it's great.
What's the power plant at the front?
In the front, I have it's a Taghmon engine. It's the smaller of the Taghmons. It's the 0235 engine. So it's 118 horsepower.
Okay, obvious question is, how do you end up flying a machine like this? What's your journey into aviation?
My journey into aviation, I suppose I started off always interested in it, but could never get around to doing it until I was later in life. And I started coming down to some of the fly-ins like this. I had no plane, had no experience, got talking to people, especially the people that were here before from SAC, and they encouraged me then to go ahead, and I done my training in Waterford Airport, which is not far from here. And from there, I suppose I just got more interested in different types of aircraft, and I always liked the field more so than the airport itself. I like the grass rather than the tarmac. But so I was looking for a plane that I could fly in and out of fields, with short capability, and have capability of going on a long journey as well. So, there's plenty of baggage space in this one, so you can go off, bring the tent,
really
camp overnight if you wished.
It's the ultimate bush flying idea then, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
So flying low and seeing a lot of the countryside.
Yes, and being the high wing, of course, you get a good view downwards, yeah.
How long have you this particular airplane?
I've only got this now just a little over a year. Okay. So it took me a while then to deregister it from France and to put it on the Irish register. And I was very lucky that even with the COVID, the DIA were working from home and they managed to progress it quickly. So I was very pleased and impressed, So now at least I have it for the summer.
Have you had your favourite flight in it yet?
Well, I haven't gone too far in it yet because it's new. I'm only getting used to it. So I've only been going down to the coast, going down to the islands down here, Kilmore, and around the surrounding countryside here.
Any plans then?
Any plans? The plans will be to go further up the country and progress on. And I'd like to go to Scotland would be one of my plans.
Oscar rating back to 36.
Yeah, there they're up. It's climbing out nicely.
I'm going to get in trouble if I keep you away from that washing up. We better go back.
Okay, we go back, yeah?
Gabriel Tracy.
And Gabriel, we're standing here beside a beautiful aircraft,
yes.
Piper Super Cub.
It's better known as a Piper Super Cruiser.
Right. The distinction being?
They were built in 46 and 47, and the difference between a Super Cub and a Super Cruiser is the Super Cruiser can carry 3 people, 2 in the back. You see, it's wider in the back.
Yeah. And you were saying about the particular airplane in terms of its capabilities. First, I suppose a lot of people would know the Cub, and it's the first airplane a lot of people even had an introduction to.
Yes.
What was the story that they brought it to the level where it is now, the Cruiser?
A guy up in Montana used to buy those airframes and reconstruct them into this configuration. First, they fitted flaps on them. They put Super Cub tail feathers on the back of them, and they fitted a Lycoming O320 150 horsepower engine onto it, and so that made it largely like a Super Cub, other than it wasn't a Super Cub. No, if you look in the back, there's a bed. You can if you're out fishing or hunting and you got stuck, you can sleep in the back of this airplane.
The original camper van with wings.
Look in.
It's amazing. There's actually a full-length bed there.
Yes.
And what's your history with this airplane?
I bought it in 1990 in Montana, and brought it back in a crate here, and I have it since. And it performed pretty good. It'll cruise at up to 100 knots, way faster than a standard Super Cub. And it's because of the shape of the fuselage. You see, the fuselage in it, you see it goes out, it's more aerodynamic, and the windscreen is more raked back in it. So they're faster than a Super Cub. But they land equally slow as a Super Cub.
What's been your favourite flight in it?
I've been to the south of France in this. Lots of trips to Sywell. Lots of trips. I go to Edinburgh. I have a daughter married in Edinburgh. I often fly there. I've been everywhere.
And your own introduction to aviation, how did you get started in it?
My introduction to aviation started in about 1957. A guy who I knew, he stayed at our house by the name of Willie Gildee, learned to fly in Weston. And I learned to fly that time in Taghmon. And there was another neighbour further up by the name of Johnny Farrell, also learned to fly. So on a Saturday they used to bring me up to Abbeyshrew, and I got many a trip in the Taghmon, and they had a BA Swallow as well. So that was it. And it was in Jimmy Burns's field. The field wasn't where the airfield is in Abbeyshrew now. It was in Jimmy Burns's field, which was a little bit to the north of that. Yeah.
Your first solo?
I learned to fly then in 1970, and it was 1970 before I got back to it. And my first solo was at Dublin Airport. I learned to fly at Dublin Airport and at Burr. But I went solo first in Dublin Airport. That was common back then in 70 because it wasn't busy, and Iona Airways, Pierce Cahill's company, operated there, and it was the normal thing to do.
Do you remember the aircraft?
It was Victor Mike, Echo India Alpha Victor Mike, a Cessna 150. Yeah.
Oh, we actually share that in common.
You flew that as well. There you go.
Small world.
Small. It gets very small.
Doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah. And from that point onwards then, did you ever think of it as a career, or was it just...
Yes, I did. But what happened at that stage, the CFI at Burr at that time was an ex-Aer Lingus captain. Bill Allen was his name. And he wanted me to go up to Bill Howard, who was the training captain, and he was involved in the selection that time. But I had started a business, and I had got married, and I had 2 kids, and never followed it up.
Same story, isn't it, for a lot of people?
That's the story. I never followed it up. I would have loved to, but that life took another direction. And it probably was lucky. From then on, I own a private aeroplane for the last 45 or 6 years, so I did okay out of it.
And for somebody who's thinking of buying an airplane for themselves,
yes,
have you any advice in terms of like how much use should you get out of it? And they say that the 2 happiest days of a man buying a boat is when he buys it and sells it. Is it the same for an airplane?
I think so. I think so. My first airplane I bought, it was about 1974. It was a Piper, or not a Piper, but it was a 7EC, an Aronca 7EC. I bought it off a guy over it was in Biggin Hill. And that was my first one. And the airplane was re-registered here in Ireland as Echo India Bravo Bravo Echo. And that still flies in Craughwell. Seamus Coughlin owns it up at Craughwell. Yeah. And then I sold that, and I bought an Aronca sedan down in Tucson in Arizona. Echo India Bravo Kilo Charlie, and that still flies in Burr. Been rebuilt since,
So anybody flying in Ireland knows the seed breeding generation of most airplanes around the place,
yes,
don't they?
Oh yeah, that's for sure. Now, but the Champion I owned, the BBE one, I had a partner in that one who later went to Australia, Alex Bailey from Bursakane. He later went to Australia, and he's back now again, but
Tell me about we'll walk back up. Tell me about being at an event like this and the importance of it for people in aviation.
Yeah, you get to know the other people from all around the country. That's the big one. People you would never meet otherwise, you know.
Nicky O'Brien's my name.
Nicky, we're standing beside a beautiful aircraft. I was immediately drawn to it. What is it?
It's a Beagle A61, derivative of the Oster A06. So she's a 1963 machine, rebuilt in England.
Did it see military service?
Oh yes, she was in that's her markings.
Right.
She served as VX924 in the Army training mission. So she's back in its Army colours. So.
It is in beautiful nick. What was the story? Restoration much involved?
Yeah, that was all redone in 2018. She was stripped completely. All the tail feathers, doors, undercarriage was all redone completely, and all the wings were stripped and redoped and repainted in the military colours, you know.
And I inadvertently called it an Oster because I was looking at it from a distance, but there's a bit of
well,
connection.
she actually was born as an Oster A06, rebuilt as a Beagle. She got a much bigger tail. Added more weight to the tail of it, so she's quite heavy plane. It weighs in empty at 1,560 pounds, whereas the old Oster was weighing at around maybe 1,200 pounds. So she gained a bit of weight, but that's she got a 150 horsepower like Cumming engine, which replaced the Gypsy Major.
And what's your relationship with it?
I only have it now. I have it about a year and a half. I have it 2 years next May. And I had an old Oster, but it was underpowered. It had a Luton minor engine in it. I wanted more with some because the old one wouldn't climb when you got off the ground. This one will climb. And she'll get off the ground in about 200 metres as well. So it's not too bad.
And I'm looking for the reg on it, so you must have got the permission.
I'm exempt from the reg. The reg is on a little sticker, a plate, a steel plate, only about 3 inches by 2 inches. And that's the only identification is on her. Whereas the rest is, I've got an exemption for putting on the Army, leaving the Army markings.
And the interior is superb.
And that was all redone as well. That's all rebuilt by the crowd that rebuilt it.
What got you into flying?
The Beagle. I've been flying for 30 odd years, just a hobby.
Where'd you start?
Started with the Marpnell Hall in Kilkenny many years ago in 1990. So flying since, and I still do a bit. You know.
What kind of airplanes would be in your logbook?
Well, I had the old Oster. I had a Jodel 1050, and the old Oster A4, or what they call it, J1 Oster, and I had a Citabria, good 150 Citabria, good plane. And a Taylorcraft, which is a derivative of the Oster again. I like the Oster. They're a very stable, heavy plane. Cruises, not a fast airplane, cruises about 90 knots, 95 knots.
What was their original role? Was it observation or training?
Observation was the Oster but this thing was training because she wasn't born until 1961 through these crowd. She originally is 1949 Oster. They're the same as the Terriers, the Oster Terriers 2s, but she's an actual Oster Terrier 3 really. So, but she just went back into Beagle and they were redone. But I don't think it was a success financially, so they stopped doing them. I think she's the only version around, even in Europe, that has the 150 like homing conversion on it from the Gypsy.
In terms of flying, then, for you, what's a good day's flying?
Oh, sure, I fly locally. I fly within 50 miles of my own base. And then I have another aircraft on that we fly a half share in an RV6.
Oh, nice.
So she travels much quicker.
You're doing a bit of touring and take that.
Touring and take that. She's way quicker, you know. She's a 150 knot airplane. That's only a 95 knot airplane, you know. And
with, lockdown and COVID and everything like that, people have been sort of dying to get back out into an event. And today's a good one.
Oh, it is a great event. The weather's fantastic. So I'm sure there'll be lots more coming in here today and tomorrow.
Noel Marr is chairman of the Irish Light Aviation Society.
Well, first of all, you're more than welcome to the sunny southeast. We've all been starved of fly-ins over the past 2 years. We managed to get a great midsummer fly-in here back in June. The weather was just perfect for us, and this weekend we had a harvest fly-in planned, and because the weather was promising and we're coming to the end of the season, we said, look, let's have 2 fly-ins back to back. So we're here this morning and we'll be here again on Sunday. But as you can see, the airfield, it's a lovely setting. We're just north of Kilmore Quay and the Saltees, which is a great reference when you're flying down. Some people still have difficulty finding it, but with the Saltees and Banno Bay on the right hand side, you've got 2 very good reference points. The field is just under 600 metres long. We have a displaced threshold at both ends so that you clear the boundary fence. Not that it's a problem because they're frangible and there's no ditches. We filled those in some years ago. And the approaches are absolutely fantastic. And that's one of the big benefits. You know, lots of sky, no obstacles in the way. And as you say, we're just getting back. We've had a difficult, as we all have, difficult time over the past 2 years.
So give us an idea about the kind of range of aircraft that we've even dropped in so far this Saturday morning.
Sure. Well, look, it's been a slow start because there's been a little bit of low fog around the country. I came from Kilrush now, and there was low cloud base at Bunclody, so I came down over the Blackstairs, so you have to obviously bide your time. But you have a reasonable response. It'll be a slow burn, I'd say. Just starting at the end here, you have Gay Tracy's Piper Super Cruiser, Echo India Charlie Fox Hotel. A lovely machine. It's got droop wings and also for short takeoff and landings. So Gay babies that machine. Then you have a full range. You have a Murphy Rebel here that's only on the ILAS system and the since early this year actually. Then you have the machine I fly, Piper Super Cub, PA 1895 November Yankee, which is pretty well known. It's been in the country since the mid-60s.
What is her story?
Well, it's a long story. You probably don't have enough time.
We have all the time in the world.
But effectively, it was brought into Ireland by Jack Braithwaite originally, who were aerial photographers, and it was used commercially based in Coona and Shannon. And it was flown by the famous Hayden Lawford. And Hayden ended up flying for many years afterwards with Air Arran. Sadly passed away a few years ago. But he was only a newly qualified commercial pilot, and he cut his teeth on that when he was only 2 years old. But it was imported into Ireland in the mid-60s by the Central Flying Group in Thurles. They were anxious to get a club going. And they negotiated to buy a Piper J3 Cub from CSE Aviation. And they went over to buy the aircraft, I think for something ridiculous like £800-900 at the time. And they came across the Super Cub, which was a couple of £100 dearer. And they then realised it had electric start, it had all the creature comforts. So for what they were looking for, it fitted the bill. And that's the story. So it came back, it was operating here on the G-Reg for a few years, and then they put it on the Irish Reg. And it's had, as most aircraft of that vintage have had a checkered history. She had a bad prang down in Spanish Point in 1978, and it was almost a basket case at that stage. But previously it had done a few landings on the sleeve blooms, it had mushed down on header and things, but they're a very robust aeroplane.
It must be one of the oldest on the Irish Register. I mean, Alpha November
wouldn't
Yankee.
Be quite in that league. Well, it is. In 1965 it was registered. The machine itself was built in 1959 and it was delivered to the UK 1960, but it has spent all its life in Ireland. It was rebuilt then in the early 80s by Eddie O'Loughlin from Monstrevan. Eddie is an absolute wizard with them. He's built a number of aircraft, including Tiger Moths, and he built that, and he had a farmer, but a fantastic pair of hands, very good engineering know-how, and any work he did was always superb. So it stood the test of time. I think it first flew then after that rebuild in 1986. So I've been flying it now for 34 years, I think.
And the distinction, I suppose, of ILAS and the purpose of it was that aviation at one stage got extremely expensive.
Absolutely.
And you were looking for a way, I suppose, to make that more accessible and keep the safety.
That's right. And back in the 1980s, the amateur built movement started first, and the first aircraft that was built in Ireland was by our friend Mick Donoghue, and he was a rep at the time for IBM, and he built this Evans Volksplane, which in fact is in Ballybuckle as you speak, and he actually pioneered the whole movement of amateur building, and he then formed what was to become the Society of Amateur Aircraft Constructors. Parallel with that, you had people on the classic aeroplane side who actually were buying ex-C of A aircraft, and once the permit became available, it did exactly what you described. It allowed people to operate a light aircraft without the same stringent requirements as C of A aircraft. So it also allowed the pilot owner to do a great deal of maintenance and work himself. In fact, almost to the point of restoring them. So that was the background. And then, as you know, in 2009, SAC and the Classic Airplane Club came together and formed what is now ILAS. So we cater for both the amateur builder and the ex-factory restored classic and vintage.
And that is quite a surprise, because while yes, you can look at some beautiful old classic aircraft, you look at some of the other aircraft that you support, and these are very, very high-spec, high-tech aircraft.
Yeah, well, the modern LSA type are very high-spec. Unfortunately, as we speak, ILAS does not have approval. It's not within our scope to permit ex-factory aircraft that are newly built. It's something we're working on, and we've applied to the IAA for this because EASA has, in its wisdom, decided to allow national aviation authorities to opt out and of the EASA scheme for that category up to 600 kg. We've an application with the IAA and we're expecting they will do some
So this research. Is the conversation you hear at airfields about the 650k approval? Because obviously with the microlights at 450 they're somewhat limited with fuel capacity for touring and so on, and sometimes with 2 up you're marginal in terms of... And I suppose for clarification, that's not... The aircraft is capable of the 650, it's the legislation says it's 450. Well, yes and no. Some are only designed to the 450 spec and were certified for 450. They would find it almost impossible to get up to the 600. If it was certified as 600, but restricted in this country to say 450, well then, sure, it's paperwork. But if it was certified and tested at 450, it will not be... It's good to stay at that. To do it retrospectively, you could do it, but it would be a very expensive exercise. I mean, this type of machine here, the Icarus C42, lovely aircraft, Rotax engine, again, that would be a microlight aircraft, and it's a credit to the engineering that they were able to get such a package into such a lightweight machine. This machine here, Michael, it's one of our... It's a Falco. It's a Falco F8. It's Bravo Charlie Juliet, operated by one of our members, Mike McLaughlin, and it was rebuilt many years ago. It was an Abbey Shrule for a while. Lovely airplane. Retractable undercarriage? Retractable. He has the bigger engine. Some only have a 150 horsepower, Dave, and there's 160s and 180s. But certainly, and it's mechanical retractable undercarriage, which is interesting, you know. But certainly they were always very, very sleek-looking aircraft. And here's the owner himself now, I'm sure he'll tell it. Is that a constant speed prop?
Yeah.
So he's a constant speed prop.
Oh God, yeah. It makes about a 35% difference to the takeoff performance.
Does it really?
But it's 25 kilos sticking out the front. So
yeah, whereas some of the earlier machines were fixed pitch 150 horsepower.
They were pretty much all,
Yeah, but this machine, you know, it was one of the predecessors to the Marchetti, because they were both designed by Stelio Frati. It does look like it.
And
is it the same wing?
Yeah, when you think about it, they put an IO 540 in the front.
Yeah.
Same wing and about a significant weight increase.
Right.
She's nippy enough now, but
the other interesting feature of it is that the structure is wood. Is the wing, the spars and the ribs are all wood?
She's all wood.
Yeah, which is amazing, really. Fantastic. For such a sleek aeroplane.
Lots of people think it's glass.
Yes, it's a credit to the designer, and they're very much sought after now. Of course, we've a Cessna 172 here again. We get a lot of GA colleagues who come along on the day because we've sort of built up a little reputation, I like to think, for our catering. The breakfast is good, actually. Yeah, have you sampled it yet? Not yet, but it's on the list. We better not delay it too long, Michael.
Call us and now in runway 36, Bravo Kilo Charlie.
Dave, we're here at ILAS. Great activity going on this weekend, but next Sunday there's another opportunity for pilots to get a bit of breakfast.
Yeah, we've the famous Burr breakfast fly-in back on next Sunday, which is September 5th. Weather permitting, and if it's anything like this, we're going to have a fantastic morning. And the morning this year is a native St. Vincent de Paul and Burr, so we're delighted with that.
You've had some great support as well from sponsors, I think, for this particular event.
We have, and without their efforts, obviously these things are much harder to do. So we've had Musgraves and Java, Limerick Frozen Foods, Judy's Hotel, great sponsors and supporters of the event.
So what would you say to any pilots who are thinking about going out next weekend?
Get up early, don't eat any breakfast, and have your appetite ready and come into Burr.
That's Dave Carboy with a reminder about the Burr Breakfast Fly-In on Sunday next September 5th. And we'll be there. A special thanks to Noel Marr and the Irish Light Aviation Society members for their hospitality.
To get the news first, subscribe now to Squawk 7000 on your favourite podcast platform.